What's going on, you rogues, rebels, and renegades? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Rogue Country Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today is episode 62 and we have the fabulous Frank Turner on. But before we get into that incredible talk with Frank, today we are brought to you by Pick Print Screen Printing. They're a Liverpool-based family-run hand screen printing company, and I love these guys. They do my t-shirts, they do the Rogue Country t-shirts, they do Josh Bettis' t-shirts. So if you need band merch, workwear, business uniforms, club or sports team wears, or apparel lines, please get in touch with them. They use eco-friendly inks. It's all done by hand, and they're just an incredible company to work with. I love them, and you should go support them. If this is your first time tuning into the Rogue Country Podcast, welcome. We have some phenomenal guests in our back catalogue that I urge you to go check out. We've had incredible UK country and folk artists on. We recently had My Crooked Teeth on. We've had Chris Dover on. We've had Josh Bettis on. And we've had some incredible American guests and international guests like Jamie Wyatt, Anthony Simpkins from the Gems on VHS YouTube channel. So if you're just tuning in today, welcome and please enjoy the rest of this back catalogue. If you're a fan of live music, don't miss out on any of these incredible tours that are hitting the UK. We've been talking about American Aquarium. Their tour has been and gone, and they fucking killed it. I was lucky enough to see them in Manchester, and it was an experience. It was amazing. I got to run into Jody Davis from Fargo Railroad Company as well, which just made that night extra special. But if you love live country and folk and roots music, you don't want to miss these tours. In March, John R. Miller and JP Harris are doing a co-headlining tour, and it's just going to be incredible. I can't wait to see these guys in Manchester. On the 9th of March, they're in Glasgow, 10th in Newcastle, 11th in Manchester, 12th in Nottingham, and 14th in London. You do not want to miss those guys. Also, in April, from the 1st of April, Mike and the Moonpies are in the UK, and you do not want to miss these guys. They are just incredible musicians, incredible country artists, and it's going to be a hell of a tour. So April 1st, they're in Newcastle. April 2nd, they're in London. April 3rd, they're in Nottingham. April 4th, they're in Manchester, and I'm opening for them. It's going to be incredible. And on the 5th of April, they're in Oxford, and I know Alex Connolly is opening for them. He's a friend of the podcast. You will not be disappointed. We're also working hard here at Rogue HQ to bring you some incredible live gigs. The contracts have been signed. We cannot say anything yet, so we're going to keep rolling on to these announcements. We've got 2 incredible Hank Williams shows coming up in September. On September 17th, the 100th year anniversary of the birth of Hank Williams, there is an amazing show at the Bunkhouse in Swansea featuring Ashley Harding, Josh Bettis, and the Taff Rapid String Band. And on the same day in Birkenhead, I am hosting an all-dayer with Brandon Ridley, Cold Hands, Young Devils, the Burner Band, and me. And it's just going to be an absolutely incredible day of music that we're hitting 2 venues in 2 different parts of the UK. And it's going to be phenomenal. Tickets are available now for the Swansea date. Thank you so much to everyone who's bought one so far. They are £10. They're available on Skiddle. You can find them on our Rogue Country Facebook. Birkenhead, it's a free all-dayer. Thank you so much to the Swinging Arm for hosting us there. It's going to be an epic day, and we cannot wait to share in the love of Hank Williams and his music. We have a lot more stuff in the works, but we can't announce anything yet, so please stay tuned. And if you do want to support Rogue Country and our endeavors, you can pick up a Rogue Country t-shirt from our Bandcamp, or you can also pick up the brand new Rogue Country mug. By buying these merch items, you help us keep putting on independent shows with incredible UK and American artists and international artists the best we can. So head over to the Rogue Country Bandcamp, pick yourself up a shirt and a mug, and help us spread the Rogue word. But let's get down to business. Today's episode is with Frank Turner, the folk punk icon. He released his 9th studio album, FTHC, last year. It's phenomenal. If you've not listened to it, check it out. And I can't thank him and his team enough for making the time to sit down and talk with me ahead of his sold-out tour. We sat down with him in between his Ipswich dates. There was an issue with connection, so at some point during this interview, it drops out. I'm going to pop up again and we'll carry on with the rest of the interview. But thanks so much to Frank for not just making the time for one night, but then to come back immediately the second night to finish the interview. It really just shows how much of a fucking stand-up guy he is. And this was a phenomenal talk to have. So thanks so much to Frank and his team for making this work. So without further ado, this is episode 62 of the Rogue Country Podcast with Mike West and Frank Turner. Cool. Thanks so much. So tonight you're in Ipswich, I believe.
Ipswich Rock City, the fine and wonderful place that it is. Yes, we're. It's been a long time since I played here, but we're back here tonight.
Oh, amazing. How's the tour been going so far?
Really good. It's been a fun way to start the year. I mean, 2022 felt like a transitional year in terms of live music and the pandemic and all that business. And broadly speaking, it feels like this year has started more normally,
Yeah.
quote unquote, than any for a good few years yet. I like being on the road. I like being on the road with my band and my crew. And also, so as you mentioned, we're playing Ipswich. We sort of do a thing where we try and do one tour where we play the obvious places, Manchester, Birmingham, London, and then another one where we go to the places that perhaps not every band goes. So here we are in Ipswich, and it's nice. People do appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing because there's so many amazing venues in like every city or every town. You just kind of have to look for them and know where they are. And, I don't think you're a musician who's made it really until you announce a tour and there's someone in the comments being like, why haven't you played Warrington? Or a random spurious town as opposed to all the major ones.
Sure.
I think I always enjoy seeing those comments of,
totally. And for the record, I have played Warrington 3 times. So glad you picked that one. Maybe sound cool. But yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing because like actually historically, every band used to do it. Like there's an amazing venue in Boston in Lincolnshire called the Gliderdrome. And the posters on the wall, like in the 60s and 70s, they had Beatles, Sabbath, Zeppelin, and bands used to tour regionally. And like, I was fortunate enough when I started out to do a bunch of shows with the Levelers, who are one of my favorite bands going on, but also and friends. But they said we were doing. I remember we did Lincoln, and I'd never been to Lincoln before, and they were just like, if you want a long career, play the places that other bands don't, because it will sustain you and it will show respect to your audience and blah blah blah. And I try and sort of pass that information forward. Like it's like, hey, there's some really really cool gigs around this country that almost no one goes to, and it's the audience is there. There's people who want live music there. We just played Falmouth the other day. Nobody plays in Falmouth. The show sold out in like an hour, and it was rammed. We could have done like 3 nights. It was awesome.
Amazing. And I saw recently you got 2 crows tattooed on your ribs, which is one of the worst places to get tattooed. How are you healing? How are you holding up, especially playing live after those?
The healings have been fine. The actual process, I mean, that was the end of quite a long process. I had 4 sessions to get them done. I tend to get my large pieces done by my friend Matt Hunt in Birmingham. I used to run a shop called Modern Body Art. Now he tattoos from home. But he's like a very dear friend of mine. So we get to chat and catch up. He's been to me for like 16, 17 years now. So we get to catch up on things. But it sucked. I mean, that's a grand total of, I would say, 14 hours work there. And it's one of those things. I mean, you appear to be a tattooed person yourself, but it's like with every bit that kind of gets done, you kind of think to yourself, I'll never get that bit of my body tattooed again. That bit's done.
Yeah.
Move forward.
Yeah. No, it's amazing because I saw you and I was like, I hope that wasn't done pretty fresh, because I got this one on my forearm done and then went on tour pretty much straight away. And then the second I came back off tour, I had to go get it touched up because I just rubbed off the entire thing.
Right. I got the backs of my hands done about an hour before a show, which was an extremely dumb idea. Do you know what I mean by the heat press thing that they do sometimes when, like, my friend Oliver did these, and he like sort of microwaves a towel so it's really hot, and then when he's finished, he just like slams a hot cloth on it. And some tattooers kind of swear by this as a kind of processing thing, and it sucks a lot, but it does reduce the swelling a lot.
Oh no!
So I was like, man, I've got to play a show in like an hour. And it was like literally across the street from the tattoo place. It's a place I've been many times. And Oliver was like, "You're an idiot," and then he kind of sizzled my hands in. Nice. And it really sucked, but I did do the show. So
yeah, that's the main thing. I remember I got this done on my hand, and I made sure I was like, I'm not gigging for I think a month around that, so I was like, I'll get that done if it's.
That's intelligent forward planning, which I heartily support. Yeah. But don't practice, apparently.
Recently, I saw you played the Houses of Parliament gig for the Music Venue Trust.
Yeah.
What was that like? I know you've done some crazy gigs. You've got
Yeah.
Falmouth under your belt and Warrington, so it's not the
Yeah, and
craziest gig, but
now
it's got
the
to be up
Palace of
there.
Westminster. I mean, I mean, it was weird, but ultimately, like, I didn't go into it expecting it to be a regular gig. That wasn't the point.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the aim of the evening was very different. I was an adjunct to a different kind of initiative, you know, and like I've been doing what I can to help the Music Venue Trust with their incredible work for many years now. And Mark, who runs the MVT, sort of gave me a bell and was like, "Bet you've never played Parliament before." I was like, "I've been arrested outside Parliament, never charged." Yeah, so he asked me to go down and do it. I mean, it was weird. I knew it was going to be weird, but the purpose of my being there was to just sort of like try and turn some heads, get some influential bodies in the room and get them to shut up and pay attention, essentially. And so I played the shouty numbers, if you know what I mean. Like, I didn't play my song about Margaret Thatcher because as much as quote unquote punk as that would have been to do that, it would have also completely like dynamited the aims of the entire evening. And there is a, you know, as a boring old man now, it's kind of like, if you want to kind of blow that kind of thing up, then maybe stand outside rather than inside. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, there's no point in fucking up all the work that they're doing, so that I've got something funny to post on Twitter.
Yeah, it's a hard line for like your values and like that inner kind of punk or inner kind of person that you want.
Of course, but by deciding to by accepting Mark's invitation, I've already made my decision about what, you know. I don't know. Like there was during the pandemic, there was a lot of campaigning going on for independent venues, and there was one meeting that had been put together with an influential government minister, and of course, given the times, that happened to be a Conservative minister, and there was a very well-known musician who shall remain nameless, who was supposed to be at this meeting to convince the minister to give independent venues more money, who like 24 hours before the meeting tweeted something about how he hoped that all Tories' children die or something like this. The meeting got cancelled. There wasn't another round of funding, and a whole bunch of people lost their jobs. But that guy got likes and retweets, and it's just kind of like, you know, you can do that. You can do one or the other, but doing both at the time is just kind of a shitty thing to do in terms of the people who are actually campaigning to change things. Of which I might add, I'm not really one. I am somebody who sort of hangs around on the sidelines of that and helps when I can. But anyway, that's a long blah blah blah. It was cool. I've ticked it off my list now. I doubt I'll do it again, but I will go to my grave knowing that I have played quite near where they tried King Charles and found guilty of treason.
Well, that's the good thing, but I think it's a good point that, you know, when something's greater than you know when it's to lend your voice to something and not just kind of satisfy that instant gratification. I like the quote you did. I think it was in the Metro, whereas it's cooler to tell the story about the cool thing you did than a boring story about the thing you didn't do. And I think that's a really great approach to not just kind of being a musician, the gigs you do, but life in general. Yeah.
Well, I think part of it is that, like, Christ, I'm launching down a kind of a contentious route. Early on. But I mean, I think one of the things, a big thing for me was that I got asked by Danny Boyle to play at the Olympic opening ceremony back in 2012, and I did. And a fair few people from the quote unquote punk scene kind of gave me some grief about doing that. And it just seemed really parochial to me. Do you know what I mean? It just seemed really, I mean, I'm going to use a provocative word. It seemed kind of conservative to me to say that I should turn that down, because like, how many times are you going to get asked that question? And I do remember rather volubly saying to one of the people involved, it's like, well, next time your band gets asked to do the fucking opening ceremony of the Olympics, you can turn it down. Have I still got you here?
No, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're still hearing me, all right? Sorry, I froze for a second. Yeah, but yeah, is it, you know, when your band gets asked to do it, oh no, we've got a crackle on it. Sorry, I'm on venue Wi-Fi. Are we back in?
Yeah, it's fine.
But yeah, so, you know, I mean, ultimately, yeah, it's just this kind of like life is short, you know, and the world is enormous, and I feel fortunate to experience a tiny percentage of it, and if I can up that percentage, then I will. And ultimately, I just don't really give a fuck about what anybody else thinks about my decision making process. Too blunt.
No, totally. I think Punk's one of those things, I think, where they can back themselves into a corner by setting too many limits. Because then it's like, well, is it punk to trademark your logo? And then if you copied someone else's logo, I'm sure that punk band would have something to say about it. And it's
Yeah, totally. But I think that like to me, a lot of the time, like a lot of the kind of like ethical directors of punk rock come from very honest and worthy places, and I still subscribe to an awful lot of them. But there's definitely, and I think this is true of almost any ethical directive, full stop. But it can metastasize in extremists or in different contexts into something that's unhelpful, you know. And like I just sort of again in my journey through life, like many have been the times when I've watched people essentially booing their friends for achieving the thing that they said that they would try to achieve. And it's kind of like, what the fuck is that, man? Like, you know, if I see a band that I like do well, then I'm stoked. Yeah. And there's nothing else to say on that topic.
Yeah.
Good for them.
No, totally. Well, the tour that you're on at the moment, you've got lottery winners,
yes.
the Willswood boys at the moment. You're kind of not notorious because it's an amazing thing to do. You bring out incredible bands to support and stuff. What was it a kind of conscious process to be like, I'm going to bring out, you know, new faces to these crowds and things? Because you've had like Beans on Toast, we've got a mutual and Amigo the Devil you had over in the States.
There's a bunch of considerations about choosing support acts. You know, first of all, I feel responsible for the evening's entertainment.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I want it to be a good show. I want everyone to enjoy all the bands. I don't want anyone to have to kind of suffer through some bag of shite that a major label paid to put on the bill or whatever. You know, a very long time ago, before I really knew what was going on, there was a moment in time in my old band, we had a tour where a band bought onto it and it was dreadful. And I hated the experience. Never done it since then. So you know, there's that. You want cool bands. You want people to have fun. I want to share bands that I like. You know, like I want to spread the word. And like I think the Lottery Winners are amazing. I think the Willswood Boys are amazing. And it's because like that's how I got anywhere.
And that is where we lost connection. But Frank, being the kind soul that he is, agreed to reschedule, and we talked to him the following night. And this is the rest of that talk. Enjoy. Awesome, but thanks so much for making the time again.
Yeah, I felt bad about it yesterday. So.
No worries at all. How was last night in Ipswich?
Oh, it was great. It was really good. But I was particularly, Ipswich is about 45 minutes away from where I live. So it was like I got off stage, I jumped in my car, I drove home, and that has been very nice.
Oh, amazing. Like, I was going to ask because I wasn't sure how close you were to home and stuff. When you're off, like, have a day off on tour, is there anything you kind of aim to do in between, or did you do anything nice today that kind of relaxed you?
As I get older, as a 41-year-old man now, like, my days off, I tend to do as little as humanly possible. You know, we still put on, I think, a show that's as physically taxing as it's ever been, you know, as physically energetic. And like, you know, we're playing 2 hours, we're doing 26 songs in a set in a minute, and that's a lot, jumping around, running around, all the rest, but also just my voice, do you know what I mean? It's like, so we call it slug life. Thug life, but like, we generally speaking on days off, people, you know, usually I don't get to come home on a day off, we have a hotel room, but I tend to kind of like the sort of the opening act of slug life is like, do not disturb sign on the door, the dressing gown that comes in the hotel room, if there is one, goes on, room service, phone on do not disturb, Netflix, silence kind of thing. That's what I do. I mean, some of the, you know, my Ben, who plays guitar in my band, for example, is like he loves to kind of jet around towns and see stuff and all that kind of thing, and that is cool. But it's like it's particularly this little motherfucker's got to stay well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Is there anything you specifically do? I was just watching a Hot Ones episode with Bryan Cranston, and he talked about how he did this run on Broadway. And Monday was, he didn't say a word. It was like complete voice rest where he literally didn't speak all, no whispers. He communicated by paper. And that was how he kind of got through those Broadway shows. Is there anything you do in particular that's kind of...
I don't. I know that some people do the total voice rest thing. That's never quite, for me, it's more like an engine. My voice is more like an engine that needs to be kept ticking over a little bit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, my voice would be, because I sing extremely forcefully, should we say. Sound guys the world over tend to go, fucking hell, when I start going. But yeah, I don't do like full voice rest or anything, but like, I drink 3 liters of water minimum a day when I'm on tour. And, there's tons of kind of like pills and potions and certain types of tea and all this kind of thing, which help. But I spend like, it's one of the less glamorous parts of what I do. And I think anybody who does what I do for a living would agree with this. Like, I spend a really quite tedious amount of my day thinking about my voice.
Yeah.
And like, I sincerely hope that I will be able to do this for the rest of my life. But if somehow the universe told me that I couldn't, the one relief would be I'd go out and buy a packet of cigarettes immediately. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's just like, it gets quite dull being that obsessed with one part of your body forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, like, I've had, time away from playing live and stuff, and I don't know if you've ever had the thought, as you stepped up to the mic for the first time that day, like, what if nothing just comes out?
Oh, yeah, totally. Well, I mean, I to a degree, I feel like that about every aspect of playing live. If we have, like, 3 weeks off, we get to the first show, and I'm like, how the fuck do you do this again? And it comes back. But I mean, and that's a common thing, I think, like my wife used to be an actor, and she would say that she had a similar thing if she hadn't done a show for a little while. It'd be like, what the fuck am I doing? So, it's definitely a thing. I think that one of the things I post, because I sort of had a fair amount of time off, at least doing it full time over the pandemic, obviously. And I actually went back and had some fresh vocal coaching for the first time in 20 years.
Really?
Last year. Just because I was kind of struggling to get back up to speed again, which is partly having 2 years off, and it's partly just getting older, I mean, your voice changes to get older, I'm sure you know. And just kind of figuring out kind of like, it's not, I wasn't getting vocal coaching to kind of learn how to sing. I know how to sing, but it's more just like maintenance. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, how long can we keep this motherfucker going for? But yeah, no, thankfully now I feel like, that fallow period has come to an end. I mean, I've got a very busy year. So.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Without trying to get like a free voice lesson, was there anything you took away from those things that you immediately became staples or changed how you perceived how you like maintain your voice?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to sort of pick any one specific kind of technical thing or whatever, other than I would say the drinking water thing. I mean, I always tried to stay hydrated, but I'm now like, I have an absolute benchmark of minimum of 3 liters of water a day, which means I spend a lot of time pissing, which is what everyone wanted to know. But it's more than you think, 3 liters of water a day. It's pretty crazy, and I usually actually aim for 4, but I think, I mean, I guess one of the things is like, and again, this is just a function of getting older, is that like nowadays I start my preparation for going on stage starts 90 minutes before we go on stage. And like, I can remember being like 23 and like rolling in from the van or from the merch table or whatever and just walking straight on stage and blasting out an hour and a half set and not giving a fuck. And I just can't do that anymore, or at the very least I could probably do it once and then the following day I'd be totally screwed. So, it's part of the deal, really, ultimately. I definitely take a lot better physical care of myself now than I used to. Again, I do a fair amount of kind of like working out and cardio and shit when I'm not on tour, which again, I never did that when I was younger. And like the very idea would have been like, I'm not that kind of guy sort of thing, but it's not for kind of, I'm not like a gym bunny. I'm just trying to sort of like stay coherent.
Yeah, that's the thing. It gets to a certain point where you aren't trying to get in shape. You're just trying to stop the wheels from coming off.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that is a sad function of the passage of time, but like getting older is better than the alternative, as they say.
Yeah, no, totally. And going back to what we were talking yesterday, before we kind of got cut off, you've helped loads of artists. Obviously, you've got the lottery winners and Wills with Boys on tour with you at the moment. You've toured with folks like Amigo the Devil over in the States.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of, idea or thought process behind who you bring on tour? And obviously, you want to kind of help kind of pay it forward in a way.
Yeah.
To those younger acts.
That's a big part of it, and I started saying this yesterday, but I'll say it again while we're on a good connection. I got anywhere in music by opening for people. I mean, I don't want to disavow the radio and the press and stuff that I did have, but the vast majority of my success came from opening for other bands, particularly in the States, where I did this had about a 3-year period where it just felt like I was opening for like Social D, Dropkick Murphys, Flogging Molly, Offspring, just endless tours, and it was great. It was a good discipline as a musician and all the rest. But I want to pay that forward. In fact, Noodles from the Offspring, quite specifically, when I sort of said to him, "How do I ever repay you?" He said, "Just take out bands you like on tour, help people out," and so I do, so that's a big part of it. And like I sincerely, music is not a competition. Music was never a competition. No. And particularly now with the internet, it's ludicrous to suggest that there's anything zero-sum about music as a competition. I want everyone who's in the band to do well, actually, because it's hard. And I wish everybody success. I can't, to pick the obvious example, I can't stand the music of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but I hope that they go from strength to strength. And I hope that they make their fans happy, and I hope they live long and productive lives. So I like, sorry, where was I going with this? I sincerely hope that one day, like a band that, like I've been saying this on stage on this tour, like one day the lottery winners, I'm going to be opening for them on their stadium tour or whatever. And first of all, I'm not fully joking about that. I think they're completely incredible and they're going to go places. But it, like, nothing would please me more than to see a band that I took out on tour become infinitely more successful than I've ever been. I think that would be superb. So there's all of that. It's also, there is a degree of curation as well, in the sense I feel kind of responsible for the evening's entertainment. I want people to enjoy the show. There's also, you've got to think about the evening as a kind of holistic event, in the sense that, like, so for example, we have had 1 or 2 tours in the past where you have like a punk band first on, and then like a downbeat acoustic act, and then us, and it doesn't quite make sense in terms of the overall management of the evening, do you know what I mean? Whereas by contrast, there's a band from Minneapolis called Cuckoo Kangaroo, who are kind of completely demented children's entertainment explosion. It's quite difficult to describe them. When I told my booking agent I wanted to take them on tour as an opener, he thought I was having some kind of psychotic break. But actually, they were the single greatest support act we've ever toured with, because like their entire thing is crowd participation, and they, like, by the end of their half an hour slot, everyone, including the kind of cynical old dickhead in the Social D t-shirt at the back, are doing like dinosaur impressions or something, and everyone's loose and everyone's smiling. And when we toured with them, like, our shows, like, the room would explode the second we hit the stage, because everyone's already ready for that. Somebody has to do the work of getting people to kind of shake off their nervousness and their shyness. And if it's not a support act, then it's me, so there is a sort of some self-interest in there as well.
No, that's awesome. And obviously with Lottery Winners and Willswood Boys, you've kind of taken that from the stage as well, and you helped produce both records for both of them.
I've guested with Lottery Winners. Their producer, who's also their manager, is a guy called Tristan, who produced England Keep My Bones, and is therefore an old friend of mine. And I've sung on a couple of songs with them. I produced the Willswood Boys record. I produced for Pet Needs as well. I'm doing more production work. Not every band that I work with in the studio is a band that I'm going to tour with, but like a fair few of them, you sort of fall in love a little bit while you're working on a record. Like, certainly you listen to it a lot while you're comping vocals and shit, you know what I mean? So like, I know all the words to the Willswood Boys album.
Nice. Like, there's been Rick Rubin's had some interviews recently, and there's been a lot of talk about his production style, because he can't play instruments. He says he doesn't even know how to run the engineering software and stuff. Is there anything that you kind of have when you work with a band from your mind as a producer, or is there anything that you're trying to hit when you're producing a record?
It totally depends on the band in question, and it should do, to be blunt. Like, I mean, there are obviously certain producers who like have a sound or whatever. I don't know. I'm largely pretty suspicious of that. I mean, Steve Albini's kind of an exceptional case in many ways, but nevertheless, it's like bands go to Steve Albini to sound like Steve Albini, which is a thing. He calls himself an engineer to his credit, and like I adore a lot of his work. But like, to my mind, the best description of what a producer does is that you're the coach, you're the Mr. Miyagi, or however you want to think about it. And like, my job is to make any individual band be the best version of themselves. And sometimes that's a question of suggesting things, particularly for younger bands who might not know some of the kind of technical things that can be achieved in the studio and all the rest of it. To pick the obvious example, a lot of bands they're like, oh, we'd never play with click tracks, and it's like, oh, you want to play with a click track because it's actually contrary to what you think. It's going to make you sound more kind of together and energetic, actually. And it's, or double tracking vocals or guitars or whatever it might be. So there's some of that, but there is a big degree. One of the things I find interesting about being a producer is that you have to learn to put your ego away a fair amount of the time, because ultimately it's not your decision. And I'm so used to being the guy in the driving seat when it comes to making records. When I'm making my own records, it's like, no, sorry, this is how this fucking song goes. And like, I've had situations where I'm like, I threw up a whole arrangement for one of the Willswood Boys songs when they came in, and we laid down the basics, and I spent for fucking ever layering up guitars and like string samples and all this sort of shit. And they just came in and they were like, nah, it's not the one. And it was just like, but, and they were just like, sorry, it's just not how that song goes. And you have to go, cool, okay.
Yeah. And have you produced most of your records as well, or have you worked with producers?
I've worked with the first two solo records I did with Ben Lloyd, who's my guitarist in the Sleeping Souls, and I would say that was a joint effort. Then we so just quickly working through stuff. Poetry the Deed we did with Alex Newport, but like all of the arrangement work we did before we got to the studio. Inking Bones we did with Tristan again, but I mean, again, I've always sort of been I was pretty hands-on with the arrangement ahead of time for that one, and we didn't have very much time. We did that record in like 8 days, Tape Deck Heart was kind of the exception, because that one we did with Rich Costy, and that was very much a produced record, which was a new experience for me at the time, and one that I found quite punishing. It wasn't the most fun making that album. Positive Songs we arranged ourselves. We recorded that record in 6 days. Again, that was sort of on purpose. Do it quickly. Be More Kind was a whole experiment with like deconstruction, which I did with Austin Jenkins and Josh Block, and that was great. And they were very hands-on with that. And then FTHC again, I sort of did all the arrangements myself during lockdown, really. So like, it's only recently that I've had the ability to begin thinking about the technical side of things. And for my next record, that's going to be a new thing, as I'm going to be the one actually picking microphones and shit like that, and that's new for me. But I've been involved in kind of like the arrangement side of it for a long time.
Has there been anything in terms of, because I think arrangement, especially coming from like a singer-songwriter background, people think that the song's done as it is, and then they never really kind of reassess the arrangement again. Is there anything you've learned or taken away that you'd strongly suggest, like deconstructing, rebuilding things? Or?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is that I should mention at this point, the Sleeping Souls, like we do a fair amount of arrangement stuff together. Generally speaking, I'll write a song, vocals and guitar, and I'll have a sort of a starting direction at the very least for where I think the arrangement should go. Sometimes I have like, this song goes like this, here are the parts. And sometimes it's like, hey, let's jam this around and see how it goes. And usually it's somewhere in between those two. But I mean, I think we've kind of reached a pretty good place as a collective now, to answer your question, which is that like we try and work on the principle like there's no ideas that aren't worth trying. Never know. And like a lot of the time it's cool. This is a thing I actually learned off Scott Hutchison, funnily enough. God rest his soul. We were chatting a lot when they were making Pedestrian Verse. I was making Take Like Heart, and we used to communicate a lot, sort of late night phone calls and text messages and stuff. But one of the things that Frightened Rabbit did on that record was they write a song, arrange it, park it, and then imagine it was someone else's song and that they were doing a cover of it. Because the point of doing cover obviously is to find a new soul of the song and to come at it from a different direction. And the thing that's cool about that is that the original's still there. Do you know what I mean? That's still there, but you come at it in a completely different way. And it might be, you might go, fuck me, this is how the song goes. And you might go, yeah, that's terrible, back to plan A. And more often than not, what happens is you keep a couple of little kind of things become apparent. But I think it's quite a good discipline, and for myself, I try and make sure that there's always like a solo version of a song that I can play. I'm really focusing on that on this record, actually. I'm actually considering the merits of trying out some material at some open mic nights near me.
Awesome.
Well, just and like unannounced and just see, because again, I've always got this bee in my bonnet about the fact that like the material that I put out will be judged as being somebody's 10th album, and for obvious and inescapable reasons. But there's part of me that's curious to know how would it go down to a completely fresh audience, virgin audience. You know what I mean? I'd still want that to be impressive, I guess would be the way. But yeah, I just think that it's cool to try all different things and, you know, try slapping a capo on and playing in different chord versions or a different key or whatever. Just feel out where a song can go.
No, that's amazing. I think what you're talking about with open mics is a really interesting point. Like, I'm a fan of stand-up comedy, and I follow, you know, they start off at kind of open mics, or they drop in and do like 5-minute sets in front of a completely cold audience, and then they build it from there. And with musicians, it's kind of, you write the song in isolation, and then if you feel it's a keeper, you go out and play it in front of people. If enough people kind of do it, gets on the album, it builds that way. But to have a more organic reaction with an open mic and to do that kind of things are really interesting. Good ideas for it.
It's interesting you mentioned stand-up comedy. Actually, I have a whole bunch of friends who are stand-up comics or who work in that world, and I've long been fascinated by both the parallels and the differences between the two. And like, I watch a lot of stand-up comedy. I will never ever attempt to be a stand-up comedian. God fucking damn it! But like, there's an interesting thing watching kind of like narrative arc on the one hand, and sort of callbacks and things like that, which is definitely something I've paid attention to as somebody who talks between my songs. But also, you know, that if you want a masterclass in dealing with a problematic audience, you want to check out some stand-ups, you know what I mean? But a friend of mine, Andrew O'Neill, who's an amazing stand-up, he ran a comedy club in London for a long time, and the whole vibe was that it was like, it was for new beginners. It was like, you know, if you've never done it before, you're welcome here. But they pretty regularly have some pretty big names would come down and do, like you say, sort of 5-10 minutes of new material, just see what landed. And it's a good discipline. And it's like, shit, yeah, there's a reason they do that. It's a smart move, you know? Maybe I should do that too.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think, you know, as a comic gets bigger, it doesn't really matter what they say, it becomes the person. Like, I recently saw John Mulaney in Manchester, and it feels like he's at that level now where whatever he did, it's John Mulaney, so people are going to laugh, people are going to say he killed it.
And I love John Mulaney, incidentally. He's a funny motherfucker, that dude.
But if, you know, you can't make people laugh in 5 minutes, it doesn't matter if you are John Mulaney or you are just like someone else. And I think you can be a victim of your own success. And it's the same with musicians, where, you know, you could release a song that you may not think holds up, but because of who the artist is, an audience will.
Well, I mean, I don't really want to kind of get into slanging matches now, but like, there are some popular bands who they come up with a new record and they get all the plaudits because, of course, they fucking do, and they sell a bunch of records. But it's like, what is this fucking horseshit? Yeah, you know what I mean? And it's like, if this was a debut record, no one would be paying any attention at all. And that kind of, I don't want to say haunts me, but like, I do think that it's not a bad discipline to say, how would this go over if no one had ever heard anything I'd done before?
Yeah, no, it's an amazing thing. And one of the things that I really took away from stand-up comedy was being comfortable in silence, because as a musician, when you get on stage, you just want to try and fill it with as much noise as possible. But if you do need to talk to the crowd or take a breather and just kind of take it in, seeing stand-up comics take that kind of space and work with in between the bits was a really interesting thing to see.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But who are some of your favorite stand-up comics? I've just recently seen, I saw John Mulaney on the Tuesday, and I saw Bear Kreischer on the Saturday. So it was a really fun week in Manchester.
Yeah, nice. I mean, I'm a big John Mulaney fan. I really like Bill Burr. I think he's a very funny man. I think that obviously, like, he's pretty sort of like sails close to the wind a lot of the time. I think he has the intelligence to pull that off. Yeah. It's one of those things where you slightly wonder whether everybody in the audience is quite as in on the joke as you'd want them to be. But nevertheless, he's a funny son of a bitch, that guy. I mean, I like a lot of kind of classic stand-up as well, sort of Richard Pryor stuff from back in the day, that sort of thing. What is his name? Oh, god damn it. I can never remember his name. The most recent special of his that I saw was one all about having a kid. I like Jim Jeffries, a very funny man as well. Norm Macdonald, by the way, I'm also a big fan of. Mike Birbiglia.
Oh yeah.
Name. Mike Birbiglia. That's who I was trying to think of. Mike Birbiglia. And I'm a huge Norm Macdonald fan as well. I also really, it's controversial, but I'm a Dave Chappelle fan as well. I think he's a very funny man. Again, he sails incredibly close to the wind, and he's obviously sort of pretty much like decided to nuke his own career for various reasons lately. But I don't feel the need to agree with everything that a piece of art I'm consuming says.
Yeah, no, totally. Like, because the Dave Chappelle one's weird. Like, that's how a few of my friendships kind of spawned in high school. Was I had a friend, and we were kind of in the same group, but we were on like the other sides of like the spectrum of our friend group. And it was the Chappelle show and his early stand-up that we kind of clicked. I was like, oh, you like that stuff too. So I do have that soft spot for him, but it has just been weird to see him kind of nuke his own career, and watching his like last specials. It's yeah,
it's an interesting thing, and we're straying into controversial territory here, but like, there is a moment where I start feeling quite a big generational divide with myself on the other side of it, which is an interesting new feeling for me. But like, I went to the Sensation exhibition when I was a kid, and like, there was a huge thing that it was the world of progressive politics was very much about kind of blowing up taboos when I was young and in my formative years, and it was very much, you expected and wanted and cheered on an artist who didn't give a fuck and did whatever the fuck they want. And that was bred into me pretty hard. And I still subscribe to that to a pretty large degree. And I still think that, there is this kind of modern idea, of which I'm arguably a proponent, and I will hold my hands up that punk rock should be nice in some way. And I'm not sure that that's historically accurate. Of course, having said all of this, I'm not particularly a fan of needless cruelty.
No.
Or anything like that, or like sort of like cruelty of any kind, really, actually. But at the same time, it's kind of like there is a part of me that like respects an artist's right to do whatever the fuck they want, and to explore their art, and I do think that the world that we live in now, where there's a sort of a lot of younger people seem to have a sense that the kind of the public has a right to sort of curate an artist's output, is slightly troubling for me. The public has a right to not consume an artist's output, absolutely, of course, and always has done, but like, I'm not sure. I'm never comfortable with the idea of telling an artist you may not do this or that. No. It's like, fuck off. Like, that's not what an artist is, is how I feel.
Yeah, no, I think the same. And I think with Chappelle, the thing for me as well, as a comedy fan, what he was saying just wasn't funny. And it did turn to cruel. And it was, and people talk about it. I think there is a strong point to be made about punching down and all that kind of business as well. I don't know. I mean, we should move on from the topic. Totally.
But I sort of like, I feel like there's something I find quite empowering to me to watch somebody who doesn't give a fuck what people think and just makes the art they make. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, totally. But going on to kind of fan power and audiences and stuff, you've said before that you don't like the word fan in terms of when it comes to yourself and things like that. And I think that's a really interesting thing, because the word fan does create division and does kind of create like a hierarchy when it should be a lot more kind of communal or back and forth to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I guess these days I would recognize that the different people have different takes on this, and that's fine. But it was like, I remember as a kid, like, I just wasn't interested in the sort of Oasis take of being in a band. And like, as I've sort of grown into some respect for that band actually as I've got older, but I hated them when I was a kid, partly because it was just shoved down your throat when, I was 13 in 1995, you know what I mean? It was an appalling time to be a teenager who wasn't that sold on Britpop. I can see your cat climbing up in the background. That's right.
Yeah, I've just decorated it, so if he ruins anything, I'm gonna see my ass.
but I think their entire shtick, very consciously, was to be rock stars. You know, and I just always found that hugely alienating. I was like, who gives a fuck? And it was just. I was not cool as a kid. I was extremely alienated and unpopular and isolated and all the rest of it. And anything that brings that kind of high school cafeteria pecking order thing back into art is extremely disinteresting to me. And by contrast, at least on paper, at least ideologically, punk rock was not about that, and it was about this idea of community and communication within community. And I think that Malcolm McLaren said a very interesting thing a long time ago about how there was more in common between punk rock and folk music than most people would originally think. And he said that before this sort of folk punk thing that's happened in the last 15 years happened. And I thought that was a smart thought, because it is this idea of community music that's less about ego and more about discussion, for want of a less pretentious word. And so, if you just refer to a body of people as the fans, it's just, you're very quickly your Axl Rose. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and with no disrespect to anybody who does like him, Guns N' Roses have always represented like everything I hate about music to me. It's just like, I'm not a fan, I'm afraid. But it's just like, oh, whatever, like, and there's this, it's like, it's this idea, this feeling that you get, and I feel like I get this a lot with quite a lot of modern kind of pop music, that like, like I get this when I watch Black Eyed Peas videos on the very rare occasions when I do that. It's just like, here is a glimpse of a party to which you are not invited and never will be. And there seems something kind of like faintly kind of like almost like self-disrespectful about people who then press their face up against the glass and go, wow. It's just like, fuck those people. I don't want to be those people. I don't want to hang out with those people. I don't want anything to do with, and I'm not talking about the Black Eyed Peas here. I mean, again, good luck to them. But like that sort of self-consciously exclusive, cool, all that sort of bullshit is just I just think it's gross, and I don't like it. And if people disagree with that, they're more than welcome to engage with it. But for me, it's just kind of like, I don't want to go to your party. It appears not to have crossed your mind. You know what I mean? And so talking about the fans, and like, I love the fact the first hardcore show I ever went to, the first band finished and just jumped over the barrier into the crowd, and the second band jumped out of the crowd and picked up instruments and started playing. And there was something very striking about that fact. That really made a huge impact on me, and made me think about what music is and what the communities around music is supposed to be. Yeah, but yes, I don't like the web fan.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's hard. I think, especially with artists either coming up or want to forge their own identities, because you do have artists like Bowie or Lemmy say that no one wants to see a guy in jeans and t-shirts performing, but then there's a huge. You do want to see yourself in the artist. You do want to see that kind of everyman. Yeah,
well, I mean, I think clearly some people do want to see people in jeans and t-shirt performing. So, I mean, Bruce Springsteen sells a lot of records. But here's the thing, like, I mean, Bowie's a funny one for me. Like, I wasn't a fan when I was a kid. I have come much more his artistry as time goes by. And I, he was smart as fuck, and he knew exactly what he was doing, and so on and so forth. I guess in some ways it's almost like he's a dangerous example, because like there's not many people who can pull off things with David Bowie. And to be blunt, I don't think Mark Bolan pulled it off, to pick an obvious example. It's just kind of like, again, each their own and all that. And like, I think, for example, like the whole thing of Orville Peck, or whatever, the way that he's producing what he does, I think is really interesting, and I think it's kind of cool. But it's just, I don't know. It's like, I just don't like snobbery is the bottom line. And it's like, I don't think David Bowie was even remotely a snob. In fact, from everything I've read about him, he was quite the opposite. So he found a way through this morass, clearly. So, but like, I've met a lot of people in bands who've been gigantically up their own arse, and I just think there it is.
Yeah. No, but I think that's what I really enjoy about kind of your perspective, and, kind of declaring that you have your open email address that people can just kind of write to. And I felt like the gathering off your new record was an anthem to kind of reinforce that viewpoint. But was there a thought process or inspiration behind having that open channel and making sure that you got that point across to people?
I mean, it's partly everything that we've just been talking about. There were some examples. I mean, I always go back to the fact that in my kind of first flush of punk rock euphoria, I wrote to Henry Rollins and Guy Picciotto. Well, I wrote to Fugazi. This was very early days of the internet, but they both had email addresses that I found on websites or record sleeves. And they both wrote back. And then I wrote a handwritten letter to Chris Hanna, who is the singer in a band called Propaganda, who were Canadian anarcho-punk band. And I wrote him a handwritten letter because they had a mailing address in the sleeve to house clean everything. And he also replied with a handwritten letter. And I'm still telling those stories now. And that was coming up on, it's 25, 30 years ago now. Do you know what I mean? And they were life-changing for me. And but partly because it sort of brought that barrier down, you know, it was like, these are just normal people. And that, you know, punk rock DIY, anyone can do it. You don't need to go to music school or be from Mars to do this. You can just do it. And that also then blends into the sense of punk rock as a kind of welcoming place or a safe space, to use a modern cliche. But like, you know, just this idea that, as I say, I felt very alienated by everything and everybody else. And then I found this place where the only barrier to entry was showing up. It was like, you found us, sweet, you're in. Do you know what I mean? And like, that was hugely, that was very moving to me as a kid. You know, it was the first real sense of acceptance I ever felt anywhere, was going to punk shows. So I mean, it's kind of like I want to pay that forward as well. It's funny, the first Lost Evening Festival that we did in 2017, which was pretty kind of wing and a prayer. Like, we had no fucking idea what we were doing. It was like, let's throw this at the wall and see if it sticks. And we did, and a very old and very good friend of mine, kind of, we were standing in this kind of like, there's a sort of like eagle's nest bit of the roundhouse where you can kind of look down on the entrance hallway. And we were standing up there watching people streaming in. And my friend said to me, he's like, oh, I fucking know what you're doing. You're trying to recreate your teenage ideal of punk that didn't turn out to be the real thing. And I was just like, yeah, fuck, man, busted, whatever. You know, and I'm aware that there are people who waste their time and energy just debating whether or not what I do constitutes punk or not. And for the record, I couldn't give a fuck. But is the way that I arrange my affairs and present what I do influenced by growing up with punk rock? Yeah, 100%. Of course it is. Is it an attempt to recreate it? Yeah, probably a fair.
No, well, that's the main thing, is you do it because you love it and you do it unapologetically. But we're coming kind of to the end of the time, and I don't want to take too much more of your time off, especially on your day off when you're at home. But you had kind of the best New Year's tweet this year that really made me laugh, where it was your local newspaper had a feature of 5 suggestions of skills. Did you manage to learn any of those 5?
No, not really. I mean, my local, one of the place we live has a local newspaper that's fortnightly and it's free, and there's something just absolutely phenomenal about its existence. I adore it. It is, and I don't know who writes it, and like, it's a small community, and but it's like, and it sort of veers wildly between being absolutely hilarious, and you know, kind of interesting. They sort of have local history and stuff like that. But yeah, that New Year's selection was very, very good. I mean, I'm not sure, you know, I always joke that like I try and pick achievable New Year's resolutions, like don't kill anyone and don't try and overthrow a democratically elected government and things like this, because then you get to December and get to celebrate having achieved your aims for the year. I mean, you know, I'd say it's funny, like I'm much more of a kind of, I much prefer to look back at the end of the year than forward at the start. I mean, like, for example, like I'm actually, this is a tiny thing, but like in 2022, I stopped having any nicotine in my life the first time since I was 10 years old. And it wasn't even that. I was on a vape thing for a while. I haven't smoked a cigarette in like 5 years, and then now I gave up the vape, and it actually wasn't that hard in the end. And it was kind of cool to sit around with my missus on New Year's Eve and be like, shit, like I haven't had any nicotine in my system in like months. It's like, it was the first time since I was a child. Awesome. And you know, that's a nice thing. And I didn't at the start of 2022. I didn't be like, this year. Yeah. So like, I think it's, there's something slightly, you can force yourself and then end up kind of throwing it all up in the air and giving it.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I think that's a really positive note to end on. And thank you so much, man. Let me just wish you all the best for the rest of the tour. I know you've got some dates in Australia and things coming up.
It never ends. We're round and round and round. So I will, no doubt our paths will cross and on. But thank you for your time, man.
No, amazing. Thank you so much. We have it, folks. That's episode 62 of the Rogue Country podcast done and dusted. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but thank you so much to Frank and his team for being so fucking nice and welcoming and rescheduling the next day. That's so cool of them, and I really do fucking appreciate it. If this was your first time listening to the Rogue Country podcast, thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. Make sure to leave some reviews, but more importantly, go back and check out our back catalogue of incredible artists I've been so lucky and fortunate to talk to. There is some incredible artists in there. Well, all of them are, to be honest, because they're all phenomenal people, but please go listen. And in the meantime, keep supporting the things you love, keep doing the things you love, and keep it rogue. Peace.